everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video we are not doing one, but we are doing two pattern reviews as part of the hashtag Sewn with New Look for this month challenge in the month of January. Now, the two tops that we are doing a pattern review for is the puff sleeve top, which is New Look 6704, as well as the puff sleeve blouse, which is the one that I have on, which is New Look 6698. Now, before we get started, go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button, and also turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into both of these pattern reviews. All right, so the pattern description for New Look 6698, which is the first pattern review that I am doing. This is a missus top. It's a pull-on pleated square neck top with elastic gathers at the shoulders. It have long sleeves with or without elastic above the elbow. Its longer hem variation has fluttered sleeves or are gathered with ruffles. So this is more of a pleated a puff sleeve blouse. It also has buttons down the front as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the skill level. So I would say that the skill level for this pattern is an intermediate beginner. Reason being is because you have to know how to do a collar band, collar, and as well as put on buttons like buttonholes and buttons as well. If you have never worked with elastic, you will need to know how to do elastic for the casing around the sleeves as well. So now that I talked about the sewing skills, let's go ahead and talk about the fabric used for this pattern. So the fabric used for this pattern was a 100% Ankara print from House of Mami Wata on Etsy. I purchased the fabric way back in July, I believe, of 2021, yes. And she had a sale going on for like 20% off, so I purchased this, and I think I used roughly about 3 yards of fabric. So this entire blouse came together so quick, and I want to say that I spent roughly about $20 in order to make this blouse. That's with the notions and all of that good stuff, the thread, the notions, and the buttons, as well as the interfacing for this in order to create this blouse. So it was very festive as well, and I think that it came out amazing. So that is the fabric used for this pattern. The pattern pieces used for this pattern, I want to say I use a total of 6 pieces. So those pieces is the front, the back, the collar band, the collar, the sleeves, and the elastic guide for the pattern, which is pattern piece number 6. So you do not cut the elastic guide out of fabric, you just cut it out of elastic. And that's basically to put the elastic around your sleeves. So it's basically 5 pattern pieces in order to create this blouse. Pattern piece number 6, like I just mentioned, you do not cut out of fabric, you just cut it out of elastic. Those are the only pattern pieces that you need in order to construct this blouse. Now I did do view A instead of view B. View A is the one with the elastic casing on the pattern as well. Notions used. So the notions used for this pattern is you need thread. You also need 3 3/4 inch buttons, and that's to go down the placket area of your blouse. Those are the only notions that you need in order to construct this blouse. So pattern sizing. So if you don't know that New Look patterns normally comes in just one pattern size, it's not a different pattern sizing, but I noticed that New Look patterns from last year to this year, they started increasing their sizes. So for the pattern now, the size range runs from pattern size 6 to pattern size 18. So 6 through 18 is the pattern sizing for this pattern. The size that I cut on this pattern is a size 10. Believe it or not, if you looked at my sew along for this pattern, you know that I said to measure the pattern pieces. And the reason why is because I have never cut a size 10 for a pattern, to be honest. So cutting a size 10 really made me want to measure the pattern pieces because it just did not seem right for me to cut a size 10. So yes, I cut a size 10 for this pattern. Modifications. Did I make any modifications whatsoever? Absolutely not. I did not make any modifications to this pattern simply because I wanted it to still have its nice, tailored looking blouse with the puff sleeves. So I did not make any modifications. I think if I do this again, I will make a modification of extending this to make it more of like a shirt dress with some poofy sleeves and some pockets. So that's the only modification that I would do probably if I do it again, which I do plan on doing this again, but also as a solid color in my wardrobe. But there was no modifications made to this pattern at all. So did it look like the pattern envelope? So, or the drawing on the pattern envelope? Yes, it does. It looked exactly like the pattern envelope. There was nothing that it did not take from anything on the pattern envelope as well. So yeah, I definitely think that it looks exactly like the pattern envelope. Are the instructions easy to follow? So to be honest, I have sewn so many button-down shirts, so I'm gonna say yes, they are easy to follow, simply because I did look at the instructions just for the sake of this review. But when I did the sew along, I have already read the instructions, number one. Number two, I have done so many button-down shirts, so yeah, the instructions are easy to follow, but if you follow along to my sew along, that's easy as well. So yes, the instructions are easy to follow. My likes and dislikes for this pattern. So there's no dislikes whatsoever. I love, 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 love this pattern. I would sew it again. I would recommend it to others. This is an amazing pattern, if I do say so myself. So yes, like I just said, I would recommend this to others. I would sew this again, and my pattern rating is a 5 out of 5. I love this blouse and I would sew it again. So that's all for this pattern review. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and change and switch over so I could do the next pattern review. So stay tuned. All right, so I went ahead and changed, and now we are doing the pattern review for this top, the puff sleeve top, utilizing New Look 6704. So let's go ahead and get right on into this pattern review. So the pattern description for this pattern says that it's a missus top with thin collar, split neckline, buttons and loops, and puff sleeves. It has a crop pull-on pants with buttons and pleat details at the hem. The skill level for this pattern is an intermediate beginner, I would say, simply because you have to know how to do the loops on it as well as the front facing. The front facing, it could be a little fuzzy, which I'll get to that when I talk about my likes and dislikes for this pattern as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the fabric used. The fabric used for this pattern is a 100% Ankara print from Smurfette Fabric Shops. So the pattern pieces used. So the pattern pieces used is pattern piece number 1, your front, pattern piece number 2, your front facing, 3, your loop, 4, your back, 5, your collar, 6, your sleeve, and 7, your cuff. So you need a total of 7 pattern pieces, 1 through 7, in order to construct this top. The notions used. So the notions used for this pattern is just coordinating thread, which I just used white because majority of the top is white. And then you also need 5 5/8 inch buttons, which is the buttons that I have right on this side right here. I just picked those up from JOANN'S as well. Pattern sizing. So the pattern size comes in, I believe, 8 through 20 for the pattern. That's the only size that they come in for the New Look patterns. There's not another size, it's just 8 through 20. So the size that I cut for this pattern is a size, I cut a size 10. And when I cut a size 10, it says the finished garment measurement for a size 10 is a 44. I have not cut a size 44, I don't think ever, to be honest, because my bust, for any top or any dress or whatever, I'm always cutting a size 16 or 18. So I did measure the pattern pieces to make sure that it was not an error on the pattern. And it measures 44 inches after you take out your seam allowance and everything. So it was spot on. So I cut a size 10 and made adjustments at the waist and the hips. Modifications. So I did not make any modifications. The only thing that I did was I removed my loops after doing the sew along for this pattern, simply because the loops it was just too hard to get the buttons and the loops and everything. So I just removed my loops from the front portion of my top. I just removed those 3 and then sewed everything back together. And I actually like it like this. I think I'm gonna put 3 more buttons on the other side. I don't know, I'm gonna play around with it and see how I like it. But that's the only modifications that I made. It's not really a modification. Did it look like the photo on the envelope? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, it does look like the photo on the envelope or the drawing on the envelope. I just feel like with my fabric, I just made it pop, okay? Unlike what the model did on the pattern. So that's why I always say, look at the line art. Don't always look at the model on the pattern, because if you look at the model on the pattern, 9 times out of 10, you will not pick up the pattern, because sometimes the models does not do it any justice. So just make sure you look at the line art when doing a pattern, or you are interested in a pattern. Are the instructions easy to follow? Yes, they are easy to follow, which I also did a sew along for it. But one thing I do want to mention, which I have already mentioned, is the difference of inside and outside. So moving forward, if you're looking at instructions and it says to place something on the inside, that means to place it on the wrong side of the fabric. If it says on the outside, that means to place it on the right side of the fabric. So if you go back to my sew along, you'll notice that I correct my loops placement, because I originally sewn it on the wrong side because I was not thinking, but I also in the tutorial, it did say, in the tutorial, it did say to sew it on the right side instead of the wrong side. So I did make that correction during the first part of the video. So yeah. So that's the only thing that I would say that you need to make note of, which is also my likes and dislikes as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the likes first. So the likes, I love this style of tops. You guys know I love button down shirts. I love stand collars. I love cuff shirts. So this was something that I really, really love. I like the little boxiness of it, because I could have just went with a 32-inch waist and called it a day. But if you go back to the tutorial, you know that I said that I made my waist a 36 to give it a little room instead of completely fitted, and the hips was a 46 is what I did for mine. So bust, waist, and hips, I did a 44, 36, 46 for this entire top, and I love how it came together. Would I sew it again? Absolutely, yes. Okay, so I do have plans to sew this again, probably in a solid, but what I want to do is I want to extend it and make it a dress instead of another top, but I do want to do it in a solid color. And I think the next time around I will add the loops up at the top, but I will not add loops at the cuffs. Instead, I will probably just make buttonholes at the cuffs and then attach it that way. I don't know if I would do that for the top or if I want to add loops. The loops did kind of make it look a little off after I put it all on. So that's why, that was another reason why I took the loops off. But yes, I would sew it again. Would I recommend this pattern to others? Yes, yes, yes. I wouldn't say this is a staple piece, but this would be one of the pieces that you could use for a dress up or a dress down, which That's what I did in my photos. I did 2 looks. I did a look with just like a dress down. I'm just out and about and I just have a nice cute top on, some jeans and some tennis shoes. And then I did a dressed up look where I wore some nude heels for those who's, you know, on the go, just throw on a purse and you out the door for a date with your girls, or, you know, just out and about like a little date night with your hubby, your spouse, your partner, what have you, right? So yes, I would recommend this to others, okay? All right, so my pattern rating. So for this pattern review, I am giving this pattern a 4 out of 5. The only reason why I took points off is because the loops. So in the instructions, it does say to base 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. It also says to use 5/8 of an inch buttons. So one thing I will say is if you are using 5/8 of an inch buttons, do not sew the seam allowance where you based it. Do not baste it at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I would baste it at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance in order for you to get your buttons in the loop once you attach the loop and your buttons to the garment. So I want to make sure that you know that if you do this pattern, new look 6704, otherwise you will be forcing your buttons into the loop and you don't want that stress like I had, which is why I took it out of the loop. So that is one thing that I did not like. Another thing that I did not like is I think at the cuffs, it may be best to do buttonholes instead of loops, because unless you really trying to show off the buttons, which I do, you will not see the buttons because of that loop. And you don't know that it's sewn together as a loop instead of a buttonhole. So I would probably do it as a buttonhole next time I do this pattern. But other than that, I love everything about this top, and I do plan on doing it in a solid, but as a dress. Well, that's all for this pattern review. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So I'll catch you in the next video, and as always, keep sewing.